this gospel, even though by now 2,000 years old, is strangely modern, we have three ways in which we can cause ourselves and others to sin. The way it is translated here is very contemporary. The old word scandalon is an obstacle in the road over which one trips and falls, and then that comes into modern theological terms as occasion of sin. But we have here in this translation, but anyone who is an obstacle to bring down one of these little ones who have faith. So that's specifically with regard to a bad example given to children. Hence it is that the Lord is extremely severe on this element, knowing how precious these little angels are and how easily led. Then he goes into ourselves, adults, and there are three we can look at briefly. If your hand should cause you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life crippled than to have two hands and go to hell, into the fire that cannot be put out. The hand can be a cause of sin in private, but also in its contact with others. There are, for instance, nowadays many ways in which using a hand or a part of a hand we can influence others for good or for bad. The texts that we send, the messages that in any way we emit through using fingers. The word digital comes from the word finger, digitus. And when we are sending bits of our brain, we are using our hand, in that case, to send out messages. The feet, then, if your foot should cause you to sin, cut it off. It is better for you to enter into life lame than to have 2 feet and be thrown into hell. The discipline of monastic enclosure is a concrete form of limiting the damage that vagabondage can cause. People who are outside themselves and need always to be seeing new things and cannot sit still are their own worst enemy. Indeed, the great thinker Blaise Pascal, in his Pensées, thoughts, had one pithy saying, "Tout le malheur de l'homme, all the misery of man, se trouve dans le fait qu'il n'est pas capable de s'asseoir et ne rien faire," comes from the fact that he is incapable of sitting down and doing nothing. It engenders the human fidget, who, rather than face himself, does anything whatsoever. And they say that the devil, when he's got nothing to do, chases his own tail. People who go through life fidgeting. We need stillness, therefore there are times when it's good to be able physically not to be on the move. And the choice of places that we go to is not indifferent either. And hence it is that we need to program, for instance, if our feet are going to take us to such and such a place, for in such and such a place, such and such a thing is likely to happen, and time will be sucked out into that plug hole, evenings on end. It's a big choice, and it can happen also in holy circles. Sometimes to get a moment of prayer, one needs 3 hours of tea, and so on. There are some people that we can't share the company of without really being drawn into certain sins. And then, this one with which I'd like to remain for a few seconds. If your eye should cause you to sin, tear it out or pluck it out. it is better for you to enter into the kingdom of God with one eye than to have two eyes and be thrown into hell. And it goes on, where their worm does not die, nor their fire go out. The worm of hell is interesting, and that's been discovered again recently in modern means. If one looks into YouTube, one finds in the whole series of things put up there some time ago, when BP was boring into the Gulf of Mexico, they were finding things at the seabed, very curious, because at the seabed in the most profound oceans of the world, it's only about 1 mile between the sea and the actual part of the down under where things change, because after a certain point it becomes liquid heat. And there, in that very limit where man has access through modern means, things start to happen in which it would seem that the bits of the underworld come into our domain. Strange creatures unknown appear and start doing strange things, eating through steel and have horrible faces and all the rest of it, in other words suggesting that there's something demonic down there. And the worm is something which way back has been seen as an inhabitant of down under. So the Lord is using this powerful language, very concrete, as is all that the Hebrew might say. Now it goes into this, the eye. We can look now just for a few seconds at what the eye can do. Nowadays, the eyes are extremely important because many people are spending their existence on earth virtually looking at a screen. Therefore, with their eyes, they're in contact with the virtual reality for hours and years on end. And it's more important for them quite often than the real reality of life, the virtual, the virtual, the virtual, to such an extent that they'll hardly notice you if you're next to them. And I just heard, the day before yesterday, a young man was here who said something which was quite frightening. He said that it had been picked up in America that the amount of impure internet to which men have access, even when they're married, has now impacted in such a way on their married life that not only is it leading to virtual infidelity and adultery, because it's a different person they're involved, or people eventually, but also physically they're, as it were, draining their energy on the genital level to that virtual sphere and people, or whatever, more at times than to the wife, and they're copying on. There's something going on here. It's actually quite terrifying that the virtual is so powerful it's actually affecting people's physical and marital life. So that's what we're up against with regard to occasions of sin in modern terms and plucking our eye out. It's just the will to say, I'm going only to look at what I want to and nothing else. And not many can do that, if we're honest, because the psychology of, e.g., the YouTube sphere and all these new ones is such that one is solicited all the time to go to the next thing. And the next thing might be a little bit further away from what one started off, further away, further away, further away, until then one is in the pit of hell. And it's so interesting that one is sucked into it. So old Nick is very present in the modern means. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Jesus,